You know those building blocks of life you hear so much about from evolutionists? They always leave one out: information. The theory of evolution has no source for new information. DNA is the library of biological instructions that make each species unique, according to the National Human Genome Research Institute. Evolution claims to have invented everything in biology through a long line of descent, so there must have been colossal amounts of new information, constantly added to DNA, to make all the new creatures. Here I will show that life is made of manufactured objects. Only a process that employs a code has the potential to produce genuine novelties in nature. Evolutionists think that genetic information appeared randomly, but it would take way too long. Chemistry alone is not enough. Information is present only in living systems. The genetic information system is the software of life, and, like the symbols in a computer, it is purely symbolic. In both the Morse code and the genetic code, the order of the units is the information carried by the sequence. There is no known natural law through which matter can give rise to information. Neither is any physical process or material phenomenon known that can do this. That is the missing link in the theory of evolution. No physical process can invent the coded information needed to create any type of living thing. Only minds make coded information and devise systems for recording and using information with meaning and purpose. Without intelligence, there is no coded information. The modern synthetic theory of evolution says genetic changes happening in populations lead to the development of new species. Biologists believe a new gene arises from an existing gene, with mutation natural selection inserting random mutations into a string of nucleotides that is already there and working. But getting the right mutations in the right places would take way too long. Evolution often needs a specific fix to a specific problem, and that fix must be timely in order to retain relevance. We need multiple point mutations to arise on the same short strand of DNA. Biologically realistic numerical simulations revealed that establishing a string of 2 nucleotides required on average 84 million years. To establish a string of 5 nucleotides required on average 2 billion years. Even given very substantial fitness effects, the waiting time for a specific point mutation ranged between 1.5 and 15.9 million years. While a population is waiting through deep time for the correct string to arise, genetic drift is systematically eliminating almost all the string variants, including most of the necessary intermediate strings between the starting string and the target string. It is now generally recognized that beneficial mutations are rare, and that high-impact beneficial mutations are extremely rare. In higher life forms where population sizes are modest, the mutation rate per nucleotide per generation is normally extremely low, about 10 to the minus 8th. This means that the waiting time for a specific nucleotide within single chromosomal lineage would be 100 million generations. Even if all of the approximately 20,000 genes in the hominin genome were already poised for a significant enhancement, and all of them were waiting for their own specific string, each one of those potential enhancements would have its own severe waiting time problem. The number of amino acids in proteins range from as few as 50 up to several thousand, but they are useless until they fold themselves into precise shapes, like this. If the shape is wrong, the protein won't function and might cause disease. Marcello Barbieri is a professor of embryology at the University of Ferrara, Italy. His research field is code biology, and he is the president of the International Society of Code Biology. These are from his writings. Genes and proteins are not produced by spontaneous processes in living systems. They are produced by molecular machines that physically stick their subunits together and are therefore manufactured molecules. This in turn means that all biological structures are manufactured.
Transfer RNA molecules carry the amino acids to the ribosome. The messenger RNA is read 3 bases at a time. As each triplet is read, A transfer RNA delivers the corresponding amino acid. This is added to a growing chain of amino acids. Once the last amino acid has been added, the chain folds into a complex 3D shape to form the protein.
Matter is made of spontaneous objects, whereas life is made of manufactured objects. Biological information and the genetic code are totally absent in the inorganic world, which means that information is present only in living systems, that chemistry alone is not enough, and that a deep divide does exist between life and matter. Both the sequence of nucleotides in a gene and the sequence of letters in a book are carrying information. Hereditary information in genes and syntactic information in language. In both cases, the information is digital because it is made of discrete units, and linear because the units are arranged in a linear order. The order of the units is the information carried by the sequence. Only minds devise systems for recording and using information with meaning and purpose. Everything else produces meaningless noise. It is embarrassing to have to explain the obvious, but it is necessary because evolutionists deny the obvious. Yet they are trusted by most people to tell them what is true and what is not. You can trust this. There is no known natural law through which matter can give rise to information. Neither is any physical process or material phenomenon known that can do this. Professor of Engineering Werner Gitt specialized in information science, numerical mathematics, and control engineering. He was director and professor at the German Federal Institute of Physics and Technology for over 30 years before retiring in 2003. Could a million monkeys typing randomly eventually produce a copy of a play Shakespeare wrote? Maybe, but they would also fill the universe with gibberish in the process. The analogy has more problems. As the British organic chemist A.E. Wildersmith pointed out, typed letters stay on the page, but chemical reactions go both forward and backward in the real world, outside of living cells and biochemistry labs, so they do not last. The monkey's typed letters would disappear from the pages. Also, a person or man-made machine would have to be there to read and identify the play if a monkey were to type it. Correctly typed pages can't identify themselves. Written languages are coded information with messages that can be intended for people or machines. Shakespeare wrote his coded information for people who read the English language code. His mind created stories to entertain, inform, and enlighten other minds. He used his hand and a pen to write the code on paper, which was transcribed onto a movable type printing press system and published in books for other minds who understood the English code. Minds who knew different codes translated Shakespeare's information to other language codes for minds who understood them. The SETI Institute, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, looks for coded information in its search for intelligence, because intelligence and coded information go together. Life is based on the copying of genes and the coding of proteins that require sequences and coding rules. A code is a small set of arbitrary rules selected from a potentially unlimited number in order to ensure a specific correspondence between two independent worlds. The Morse code, for example, is a correspondence between groups of dots and dashes with the letters of the alphabet, and the genetic code is a correspondence between groups of nucleotides and amino acids. Since the 1960s, we know that a true molecular code exists in every cell. The molecular code called the genetic code, which translates the 4-letter nucleotide sequence of DNA into the 20-letter amino acid sequence in proteins. A new code brings into existence something that has never existed before. Only a process that employs a code has the potential to produce genuine novelties in nature, because only a code can establish arbitrary links between independent objects. Any code is based on meaning, and a genetic code does exist in every cell. The rule of the genetic code, that a group of 3 nucleotides, a codon, corresponds to an amino acid, is equivalent to saying that the amino acid is the organic meaning of that codon. Hubert P. Yockey was an American physicist and information theorist. He worked under Robert Oppenheimer on the Manhattan Project and at the University of California, Berkeley. Chemical reactions in non-living systems are not controlled by a message. There is nothing in the physical-chemical world that remotely resembles reactions being determined by a sequence and codes between sequences. The genetic code had to be present from the very beginning of life. Scientists cannot get around it by clever chemistry. This restriction prevails in spite of what the concentration of protein in a prebiotic soup might have been, or maybe on some Earth-like planet elsewhere in the universe. The genetic information system must be capable of handling all genetic messages of all organisms, extinct and living. The genetic information system is the software of life, and like the symbols in a computer, it is purely symbolic and independent of its environment. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the downfall of the theory of evolution. No physical process can invent the coded information needed to create any type of living thing. It is the impassable obstacle, the insurmountable wall, the unbridgeable chasm for the theory. Without coded information, natural selection has nothing to select. It doesn't matter how long you wait for something that can never happen. It will never happen. Without intelligence, there is no coded information. Evolutionists talk about everything else. They talk around it. They imply that the problem has been solved. But reality is harsh. This finishes it. Only minds make coded information. A coding system that uses molecular machines to translate lines of nucleotides into lines of amino acids that fold themselves into the shapes needed by trillions of cells to keep themselves and the whole body alive and working in every organism that ever existed is breathtaking engineering, obviously from a mind far greater than human. Here we find God. Modern science has revealed him. Exactly the opposite of what is accepted in academia. They are scientists who will live out their lives in angry denial of reality. But now you know. The secret.